Finally, we are at the last part of Lecture 2, the geological history of the Philippines. And yes, with the power vested in me by the Republic of the Philippines, I now dub thee Sir, put your name in the blank, as a worthy candidate for hearing the physical geography of the Philippine setting. Dun dun dun.
Okay, moving on to the last part of our lecture. Yes, finally, we'll have the geological history of the Philippines. And to start this off, we'll have this video from Geography Now, and it's a video about the Philippine geography.
The actual physical land of the Philippines is the biggest treasure you will find here for sure. Anyway, the Philippines lies on the Ring of Fire and is specifically on a tectonic plate named after them, the Philippine Plate.
And about 95% of the land is made up of the 11 largest islands.
The country was essentially formed through the tectonic activity between the Philippine, Manila, and the Mindanao trenches, the Mindanao being the second deepest in the world.
This makes the country susceptible to small earthquakes and minor volcanic activity.
About 53 active volcanoes can be found in all of these largest islands except for Palawan. The most famous and picturesque of these include these three.
See this island here, Camiguin? It actually has more volcanoes than towns on it, 7 versus 5, making it the place with the most number of volcanoes per square kilometer in the world.
In fact, the tallest peak in the Philippines is a potentially active volcano, Mount Apo, located in the South Mindanao area.
The country has numerous mountain ranges and highlands that dip into the fertile valleys, the largest range being the Cordillera Range in the North Luzon area, hooking into the Sierra Madre Range on the east side, which feeds the longest river of the country, the Cagayan, that flows into the Cagayan Valley.
This valley, along with the Central Luzon Valley, are the largest arable croplands and produce nearly all of the rice in the Philippines.
The Visayas are known for growing the most sugarcane, whereas Mindanao specializes heavy in coconut and fruit production.
Back in Luzon, though, you can find the largest lake in the country, Lake Laguna de Bay, which is actually in the caldera of a dormant volcano.
The lake has a weird detached island called Talim and is actually drained by the Pasig River that flows through the capital, Manila.
And finally, the country is the heart of typhoon territory. They can come at almost any time of the year. The nation will experience on average about 20 of the turbulent storms annually, which often flood to their many river systems. But yeah, if anything, Filipinos are the most cyclone adapted people on earth. They're used to it. The water has always been kind of their thing. Swimming, sailing, fishing.
Just not exactly quite diving.
So yes, thank you for watching that video. And it's a great video. It's a great informative video. So go ahead and watch the full clip on their site, on their channel on YouTube. And with that being said, Geography Now, you can't sue me for copyright infringement rights for using your clip in my lecture because in accordance to fair use limitation right, I commented and gave a critique on your material. Just letting you know, you can't sue me. Okay? Moving on. Yes. The Philippine physical geography. Finally, we're at home. Well, the Philippine geography in its biological aspect is pretty interesting because, well, the Philippine archipelago offers a great diversity of tropical habitats for plants and animals, and also microbes. It extends from Cebu to Waiami on the southern side of the Basi Channel, and it has varying exposure to shifting trade winds, as we have seen in the 6-day satellite image of the Himawari satellite. But with this varying exposure to shifting trade winds and typhoons, these 7,641 islands would create that much diversity in habitats. And the Philippines are, of course, a part of the Greater Malay Archipelago, and we have also seen how big it is when superimposed on the United States. Okay, so we'll first have a description of the larger islands of the Philippines. We'll focus on Luzon and Mindanao. Luzon is the largest island of the entire archipelago. Yes, no doubt about that, with a great irregularity in diversity of form. First of all, there is this great central plain which extends from the north from Manila Bay to Lingayen Gulf. So this great central plain, this is the rice granary of the Philippines, which contains central Luzon. From the Manila Bay to Lingayen Gulf, so this is the Lingayen Gulf, this is Manila Bay. So this is the great central plain of Luzon. the rice granary, Nueva Ecija, and the other provinces in there. And we have also the Cagayan Valley up north, no? This Cagayan Valley up north. In the southern portion of the island, it is broken into a series of peninsula with the Camarines and the Bondok Peninsula right here. So Camarines Peninsula, that's where I live, and I mean on certain portion. And this is the Bondok Peninsula. The Camarines Peninsula is dominated by different series of volcano, including Bulusan from Sorsogon, Mayon in Albay, Bulusan in Sorsogon, Mayon in Albay, Mount Isarog, Mount Labo, and so on and so forth. So those mountains or those volcanoes, some of them are active, yes, most of them are active, dominate the scenery of the Camarines Peninsula. While on the other hand, a striking contrast, the Bondok Peninsula, right here, sometimes called the Bonpen, has a low to rugged mountains with sedimentary rock. So Bonpen Peninsula is actually a part of your Calabarzon, diba? Do you still remember your high school days or your elementary days nung kinakabisan nyo pa to? So yeah, that's the Bondok Peninsula. Okay, south of Manila and northwest of Bondok Peninsula, there are all other volcanoes, including Banahaw, so including Mount Banahaw, Taal, and Mount Makiling near Laguna. So Mount Makiling. Yes, that's Mount Makiling. On the northern Luzon part, there is, of course, what we all know as the Zambales mountain ranges. So in the northern part of Luzon, right here, right after the Manila Bay, we have the Zambales mountain range. So right here, the Zambales mountain range, right here, and the Cordillera Central, the Grand Cordillera Central, right here. So the Zambales mountain, right here, forms the western border of central plain of Luzon, with the highest mountain being Mount Pinatubo, after the eruption, no? There's a crater lake, and Mount Iba, and the volcanic volcanic peaks of your Maribeles. So I actually went here, and I've been here, in this is called the Five Fingers, and it's actually great area, but it's heavily polluted to some parts. And there is a cruise from this portion to Manila, so you can take a shortcut instead of traversing this entirety of the land. You can take a cruise from Bataan to Manila, right there. So yeah, so that's Maribeles, that's Zambales mountain ranges. So on the part of the Cordillera Central, it is more, well, the Grand Cordillera Central is more notable than any other mountain mass across the Philippine Island. Well, first of all, it's due to its uniformity in height, including Mount Santo Tomas, near Baguio, Mount Pulag, Mount Amuyao, Mount Paway, Mount Data. All of these mountains are actually high in elevation. And Mount Data, specifically, I had a lot of field works there, is situated at the junction of three main drainage lines in the region, including Agno, Chico, and Magat, and the two principal tributaries of Cagayan River and Abra. No? Mount Data is actually pretty interesting, and I had a field work there. But now, Mount Data is, since it's a plateau, it's being carved up by settlements and various vegetable gardens. So it's actually interesting to live here in the Grand Cordillera Central, in Baguio, up north. And the geologic recency of the mountains in this northern Luzon is well marked. No? They have been sculptured from a great plateau, a few remnants of which still persist. And in part, they are fault blocks, recently formed. So, for example, the Baguio Plateau and Data, Mount Data Plateau. In biologic point of view, this extensive uplifted region is important for, in this region or in this area, a temperate climate could prevail or could develop. And there is a notable amount of temperate zone vegetation in this area. Some parts of northern Luzon maintained height of 1,300 to 1,600 meters since mid-Miocene time. And this goes to show that these mountain building forces in northern Luzon have been persistent during a considerable portion of the tertiary time, and consequently our uplands have been maintained way back before, no? So yeah, guys, I hope you have watched the videos of eons and PBS regarding the geological timeline period, because, well, plus I know your Geology 11 teacher should have already discussed this. So I hope you have at least watched the videos of the geology timeline, so you have an idea of what Miocene, Pleistocene, Tertiary period, and so on and so forth would mean, no? In our discussion. So with that in mind, the land, for the case of Baguio and Data, the land assumed its present shape during the Pliocene and Pleistocene, because the general evidence is, well, for the case of Baguio, that Baguio Plateau was raised from a near sea level to its present elevation up to date. So much of this upland region has been uplifted, no, from a near sea level or at sea level. And much of this upland region has only been carved up, no, by recent slopey streams, no, carrying torrential waters from tropical rains during July, August, and September. For the case of Baguio, my geology teacher would always say that Baguio was raised from sea level. The mountain building events actually created this high elevation in Baguio. Now, we move on to the Cagayan Valley. So Cagayan Valley is actually also occupies the eastern portion of northern Luzon, and this is a great broad valley. It's well watered by the master stream, the Cagayan River, and there's Tugigaraw right there. And Cagayan River has a lot of meanders right here, especially in the lower half. And eastward of this valley is limited by the Sierra Madre Range. So this Sierra Madre Range is actually a very great, look at this, no? It's forested, no? The Sierra Madre Range. And it somehow protects this valley from winds from here. Not entirely, it somehow creates a rain shadow. Because when there are mountains, it would somehow block the prevailing winds and create a rain shadow right here. So I look at the vegetation of here, compared it to the vegetation here. Okay, so eastward of this valley, that's the Sierra Madre. Up to this point, well, Sierra Madre is still, no, a very unknown region. And this Sierra Madre range abruptly descends, no, to the Pacific Ocean. Look at that. So after the Sierra Madre range, Pacific Ocean, right here, right here. So that's that. So owing to its complicated topography of Luzon and the varying trend of its mountain ranges and intermontane valleys, the greater diversity of climate within the Philippine archipelago occurs in this island. It's actually very interesting, the Luzon Island. And we will actually see the differences, no, in climate within this island, no, is actually determined by the amount of rainfall, which is conditioned by the exposure to the prevailing wind, of course. So if that prevailing wind is blocked by a series of mountains, it would create a rain shadow here and not much vegetation. Especially if there is a great mountain blocking the prevailing wind, it would create a significant dry periods in this area. So especially when the position, no, of that mountain range is across the wind that is blowing, or athwart, no, or from the side to side, or really seems like it's blocking the prevailing wind, it will necessarily create differences in rainfall here and differences in rainfall here. That's what we call rain shadow. So it will have high amounts of rain in this area, but since there's a mountain that's blocking, it will create a rain shadow on this area. Okay, so next island would be Mindoro. So Mindoro is the south of Luzon, It's a very compact island with Mount Halcon and Mount Baco on its central and Mount Halcon on the northern part as its main mountains. So Mindoro is characterized by a rugged high mountain topography, and it has central Mindoro only has two faint traits. That is actually, it's actually wonderful, no, in Mindoro, where we can also find the Mangyans. The Mangyan indigenous people are very amazing, and they have this way of knowing the seasons just by looking at the stars or looking at different species that emerge from the ground. And yes, the Mangyans are found in Mindoro. So I have been here. I have been in Calapan. I haven't visited much of it. I only visited some relatives, some friend in Calapan, Mindoro. But I haven't experienced any white sand beach. Only black sand in Calapan. I don't know. White sand beaches for mental health. Manila Bay. Anyway, yeah, of course, I have tried some of the black sand beach in Mindoro. And next would be the island of course, the island of Panay. I also have been here, but not on the northern portion of Panay. I have been on the southern portion, specifically on Iloilo City, where they have mangrove in Esplanade, and it's actually a jump-off point to our field work in Guimaras Island, on Tacloban Island, the southern portion of Guimaras. So on Panay Island, Panay Island is on the medial portion, no? It is characterized on the medial portion of Panay Island. It is characterized by a wide valley land, no? With a gently rolling upland slope here, with Mount Nangtud, Mount Malinaw, and Mount Baloy as its main or highest peaks in this island. So Panay has a low central portion, no? The low central portion of Panay, specifically at this point, no, is slightly rain shadowed because of these mountain ranges right here. So as you can see, there's a difference of amount of rainfall between the central Panay and the western Panay. So this is due to the presence of mountain ranges right here, which creates a slight rain shadow in this area. So if you can compare the vegetation and vegetation here, there are differences, no? Because the western Panay, since due to the prevailing wind, it receives a rainfall that is well distributed throughout the year. But for the case of the western, as compared to the central Panay, due to the presence of this mountain ridges right here, there's a well-pronounced dry season in this area on the western portion. Because this mountain ridges creates a rain shadow. That's what we were talking about previously. So next to Panay Island, another major island would be the island of Masbate. So the island of Masbate is a weird island because it's a two-pronged, but at first it's a two-pronged island, no? With low mountainous island. So this low mountainous island actually marks the junction of the two dominant orogenic lines of the Philippines. And it also experienced a well-distributed rainfall due to its moderate height of the mountains. So since there are no really high, there are only a moderate height of mountains in Masbate, and since it's actually according, in with the direction of your prevailing winds, most of the area receives a more or less well-distributed rainfall. So since most of the high altitude areas here are in line with the prevailing winds from the east, it actually more or less most of it has well-distributed rainfall. No? Next to Masbate would be the island of Samar. So the island of Samar is right here. Yes. So that's the island of Samar. Okay. So Samar is at the east of Masbate, and lacks a well-defined central range. No, it has streams, named Ulut and Dolores on the island, but this island of Samar is heavily forested, as you can see right here, especially the central portion of it. And it has east to west trending rivers, so it has river to here and to here, including Ulut and Dolores River. And essentially, Samar Island is a broad marine plain or plains, no, formed during the Middle and Late Pleistocene time, which has also, just like Baguio, has been uplifted and just recently been dissected or carved by the rivers, no, in late Pleistocene and or in earlier recent times. So Samar Island is also a marine plain that have been uplifted and been carved up by rivers through eventually through time, no? During the late Pleistocene. So Leyte, on the other hand, is for me, I think Leyte is a sister city. Sister island, Leyte, of Samar, no? And in this region, you can also see, ito yung pinagmamalaki ng mga Marcos, the San Juanico Bridge right there. Yes. Yun lang yan. So, Leyte is an immediate neighbor of Samar, of course. And it is characterized by a rugged and dormant central range. In general, there is a notable plain that is Tacloban, and we all know what happened to Tacloban City, no? Yolanda, and the incoming storm surge worsened it. That's what happened right there. So Leyte in general has low mountainous range, just like Samar also, no? A very low mountainous range. Next major island would be Bohol. So Bohol, taga dito ang aking mga ninuno. Maganda ang Bohol. Bohol in a geographical view, is rounded in form and has drainage on all sides of it. It also has a well-distributed rainfall and somewhat sheltered, no, by Cebu and Negros on this side and by Leyte on this side. So it's kind of protected from winds from all sides and ocean from all sides. So that's Bohol. So Bohol is recently elevated from the sea, and that's why most of the streams since it's have been recently elevated, most of the streams have not yet taken its course on the afflicted island. Okay, next would be Cebu. So what's interesting about Cebu is it's very long and narrow. It's a very long and narrow island right here, and it has a definite backbone or central ridge, no? So it has mountain ridges right here. You can see there. So it has a backbone. But of course, this backbone or the central ridge of Cebu is not, it's not continuous, no? It is somehow broken in several places. But this backbone extends from the northern portion to the southern portion of Cebu. But it's broken into several places by mountain passes. So the notable mountains in Cebu are Cabalasan and Mount Uling. So much of the island of Cebu has, especially right here on the junction of the Mactan and Cebu area, there are considerable number of marine terraces surrounding this area. So that's Cebu. Moving on to Negros. So Negros is where Bacolod City can be found right here. There's a cruise where you can take, so you can go to Iloilo to Bacolod. The Negros Island is somehow parallel, to the Tanyon Strait right here. So this is a long narrow strait that separates Negros and Cebu. But on Negros, stream occurs on the eastern portion of the island right here and on the western portion side of Negros, and it strikes relatively fast the wide coastal plain, creating alluvial fans in here, no? So there are considerable mountains on Negros, and the thing here, since these streams from the mountain area that drips down to your wide coastal plains, the thing is, since there are rivers, creating alluvial fans, as you can see here, if you visualize, yes, look at that. There are a lot of agricultural plains right here because these plain, no? And this well-drained coastal region offers a particularly fine area for our agriculturists. Yes, so that actually creates that. So yes, the major volcano here is Mount Canlaon, right there. Okay, so next island, of course, would be the island of Palawan. Yes, so yeah, this is my dream, no, dream island if I want to go to. And as you can see, there are a lot of shallow areas right here. Yes, a lot of shallow areas. It's actually pretty interesting if you can map it. So Palawan is characterized by a rugged and elongate physical characteristic. So just like Cebu, no? But also like Cebu, it has a central ridges too. Look at this. It has central ridges or a central backbone, no? Palawan is somehow different to Cebu because Palawan came from, no, from not an uplifted marine region, but Palawan is actually a part, no, this Palawan portion is actually a part of your mainland Asia, no, Eurasian plate. It only drifted apart, no, so it only drifted apart from that region into here. So Palawan is actually a portion, no, of your Eurasian plate that drifted apart and became part of our side. But Palawan is different. It's more, and also the vegetation is more akin to your Eurasia, this entire Eurasian region, to most of the Philippines. There's actually a lot of biodiversity differences. I mean, so the majority of mountains in Palawan is, the major mountains is Mount Mantalinghan and Victoria and Mount Cleopatra. So moving on with the next island that is pretty important would be the island of Mindanao. It's a very great island. So the island of Mindanao is a largest, no, it's the largest compact island mass in the archipelago. Specifically, the part of your eastern Mindanao. Central Mindanao, no, right here, would be the great or the largest mass in the archipelago in the Philippines. No? On the other hand, the western portion of Mindanao is broken by several right here. Yeah. So this central portion is broken by several bays and mountainous peninsula, right? So the marshy valley, no, this is the most famous one. So this marshy valley of Agusan River, so the marshy portion of the Agusan Marsh, it's a biologically rich area, no? It's a biological hotspot too. That's why it's a protected wildlife sanctuary. So the Agusan River sharply set off, no, up to here, up to this point, no, where there is this portion of Siargao with the Diwata Mountains right here. So that's the Agusan Marsh, a highly biodiverse area. And with the presence of Great Fault Valley in this region, it offers a particularly good habitat, no, right here, for plants and animals of forested lowland region. The southern portion of this area, on the other hand, the southern portion of the area is wide and flat valley of the Cotabato, where we can find the Cotabato River, of course, right here. So the north central portion is a great upland plateau. So that's Cotabato. And on the north central portion of Mindanao, so north central portion, there's a great upland plateau, which is by the Bukidnon area, where there is also a lava dam, Lake Lanao right here. It's a lava plateau. And there's Pacman right here, General Santos. And of course, the largest, or the highest peak in the island would be Mount Apo, a dormant, a volcano too. So that's the central, the eastern central portion of your Mindanao. So there's Agusan, there's Bukidnon, that's Mount Apo, and there's Jansan here, Cotabato. And then on the Zamboanga Peninsula of the western portion, as you can see here, it's almost as if it's cut away, from the island mass, no, by the base. No? On general, this peninsula, as you can see here, is somewhat rugged and mountainous, with the mountain Malindang as its primary peak, and the rest of the country is minor islands, and with also as a dependency of the Zamboanga Peninsula would be the Sulu Archipelago right here, which are dependency of the western portion of Mindanao. Now, with that being said and done, now that we're done with the physical geography of the Philippines setting, we'll now move on the computer reconstruction of plate movements of the Philippines by Robert Hall, 2001. Okay, you can click the link to the description so you can visit the real paper and the real video. And, well, it's actually a very interesting animation because it reconstructs the geological history of how the Philippines was formed. And yes, as you can see in this video, the western island of Palawan has been more or less geologically stable than the rest because this was once connected to the mainland Eurasian plate that only drifted apart now. And also, Palawan is more or less connected to Borneo by a narrow land bridge during the exposure of the Sunda Shelf to the remaining oceanic island that rose from the ocean floor. No? As you have seen, more or less, the islands of the Philippines are, in term, one, volcanic in nature, and two, have been uplifted from the ocean floor, seafloor. No? So this, most of the oceanic islands, unlike Palawan, arose from the ocean floor due to subduction of the Philippine plate at the western boundaries and the volcanic activity of the Pacific Ring of Fire and the many microplates under it. No, well, it's essentially the Philippines has been a product of the two converging plate, no, of the Philippine Sea Plate and the Sunda Eurasian Plate. So we're technically a product of that. And as you can see, these microplates, no, are formed as a part of the crust separate of the major plates, and this formation creates the Philippine Mobile Belt. So the Palawan microcontinental block is a fragment of the Asian mainland that broke off during the Mesozoic in the early Miocene. Essentially, what happens is your Palawan microcontinental block and the Philippine Mobile Belt is a creation, no, of the convergence of the Philippine Sea Plate. So what's happening is that the Sunda Eurasian Plate, and the Philippine Sea Plate is squeezing in and subducting in these micro plates in here, no? That creates the Philippine Mobile Belt and the Palawan microcontinental block. Palawan was once part of your mainland Asia or mainland Eurasia, and Mindanao is the youngest island groups, no, of the rest of the Philippines, and the oldest one would be, of course, Luzon. Mindoro is also a younger island. So yeah, that's it. Thank you for listening. If you have questions, comments, and suggestions, leave it in the comment box below. And if you like this video, please leave a thumbs up. And this is Sir Patrick signing off. Once again, peace out.